Welcome to Never Again Is Now, a podcast about anti-Semitism. I am Evelyn Marcus. My co-host Phyllis Zimbler-Miller cannot join us today. The people of Iran are very much in our thoughts these days. Our guest is of Iranian Jewish background. We will ask her some questions about Iran, and we will ask her about her work as an educator about anti-Semitism at the workplace. Saba Soomekh is the Director of Training and Education at the American Jewish Committee. As a university professor, she has been teaching and writing about world religions, women and religion, intersectionality, and the geopolitics of the Middle East. Saba, welcome to our show. It's wonderful to
Thank
have you
you.
on.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here for such an important conversation.
Thank you. And we wanted to have you on the show already for a long time, and I'm happy that now it's really happening.
Thank you. Thank you, Evelyn.
So, Saba, you are of Persian Jewish background. Can you please tell us when you and your family came to, or you or your family came to America and why that was?
Sure, of course. So I was born in Tehran, Iran, and my family left in 1978 when I was just two. We saw the writing on the wall and we knew that it was time to go. My parents always knew that they were going to eventually move to America. They did come here before I was born, went back to Iran. But we saw the revolution coming. We saw the support that secularists, feminists, liberals, the left, socialists were giving to Khomeini. And we just knew that this was not, we were not fooled by Khomeini, as a lot of people were. We knew that he was an Islamist. We knew that he was going to take the country back to 16th century Shia Islam, that the quote unquote Paris of the Middle East was not going to be the way it was going to be. And so we knew that we needed to get out as a religious minority.
Yeah.
And thus we ended 2,700 years of our Jewish presence in Persia
Wow.
in 1978. And we packed as if we were just going to go for a vacation and never, unfortunately, never went back.
Yes.
And my story is not unique. It's the story of a majority of Iranian Jews, Christians, Zoroastrians, Baha'is, and Iranians who escaped the regime.
Yes. And it's painful to leave your home country, especially after your family has lived there for such a long time and your community. But thank God you left in time, right?
Yes, we got very lucky because what happened was that a lot of Iranian Jews, again, and just Iranians couldn't believe that this was going to happen. They thought at one point Carter is going to step in because Carter acted as if he was a huge ally of the Shah and was just going to help, quail this revolution. And that didn't happen.
Mm-hmm.
And they thought at any point now, again, this revolution is going to turn back. How can a man with a beard down to his knee be successful? But he was. And we call it the suitcase mentality. They were living out of their suitcases. And in America, Iranian Jews thinking, okay, at one point we're going to go back. And then a lot of Iranian Jews in Iran who stayed thought, this isn't going to be real. But then what happened was in 1980, Saddam Hussein thought this was a great opportunity because of the turmoil taking place in Iran. And you had the hostage situation. And then again, America completely rejects Iran, has no communication with Iran. So Saddam Hussein thought this was a great opportunity to attack Iran for its oil. And Iran and Iraq go into an 8-year war. And at first, they were not telling religious minorities to fight in this war, but what Khomeini was doing eventually, because they were running out of men, was taking young boys and having them join the army, where they were basically sacrificing themselves. They were thrown out into the battlefield, the bombs would explode, etc. And then they would send the army in, and in return, your mother would get a key, a plastic key, which was the key your 13-year-old boy was taking to heaven. And they were asking then for Jews and Christians, Zoroastrians, Baha'is also to join. And I think that's when the Iranian Jewish community really realized they need to get out. And Hayas was really pivotal in getting Iranian Jews out. But Khomeini did not want them to get out. And so it took a really long process. We came straight to America. It wasn't like that. Most went to Europe, a couple of years in Europe, and then worked their way to America. But that being said, it's important to note that Iran still has the largest Jewish community in the Middle East outside of Israel.
Oh.
We don't know the exact numbers, but something like 10 to 15,000, we assume. Again, we don't know the exact numbers of Iranian Jews still live there. It is not illegal to be Jewish in Iran. It's illegal to be a Zionist in Iran.
Hmm. Hmm. Okay, so there's Jewish life going on there then.
Yes, yes, and
Synagogue
it's a very
services.
synagogue, kosher restaurants, etc., kosher butcher. It's a very active Jewish life as long as it's Jewish and not in any way showing any support for the state of Israel, and as long as you're basically under the radar.
Hmm. Hmm. Is the life any different for Jews in Iran than for the rest of the people in Iran?
I think so because, let's put it this way. You are a successful Jewish business person. Someone is competing with you in business. They want your business, they want you to fail. They could just go to the government and say, you're a Zionist, you're a Mossad agent, you're whatever. And, so it's a very precarious life, I think.
Hmm.
I'm very careful to not talk on behalf of the Iranian Jewish community. I don't want to put them in danger in any way.
Hmm.
So I don't want to talk on their behalf.
Hmm.
Things are very difficult for them, and I don't want to make it more difficult.
Right. Um, so the Iranian regime of the mullahs is obviously very anti-Semitic and has genocidal aspirations towards Israel. Or should I not say they're anti-Semitic? Just that they're genocidal. They have genocidal aspirations for Israel.
Yes, that's very true.
So should I say they're anti-Semitic?
I think you could say they're anti-Semitic, even though they will not say that they're anti-Semitic because you do have Jews in the parliament, but what does that mean? And you do have Jews who are living there. And again, they could practice their religion as long as they don't show support for Israel and that they show devotion to the Islamic regime.
Yeah. So also the existence of the state of Israel is not allowed to support that.
Yes, yes,
So
exactly. Exactly.
according to most definitions of
That would be
mainstream
anti-Semitism.
definitions, that's anti-Semitic.
Yes, yes.
So, um, is this attitude and this policy of the mullahs towards the Jews, is that representative of what the Iranian people want with regard to Jews in
I, d-
Israel?
I don't think so. And that's why it's so important to make the distinction between the regime and the people. The people, they just want to live. They've been brutalized for almost 50 years. They want to have a living wage. They want to have healthcare. They do not want sanctions. The sanctions aren't affecting the mullahs and the regime. The sanctions are affecting the everyday person. They want all the oil money to be going back into their community and not into proxy wars and proxy armies. So I don't think they care. I'm not saying that they might not care about Palestinians and what's going on, but no, the everyday Iranians' obsession is not to wipe Israel off the map. It's not that America's the big saint and Israel's the little Satan. They just want to live a decent life with their families where they could dance, they could dress the way they want to dress, they could work, make a living, and just be able to, live and breathe freely.
Um, I don't know if you want to answer that question if it's too precarious to answer it, but are is the Jewish community participating in the current counter revolution?
That's a great question, and I don't know. I
Okay.
I don't know the answer. I think it would be precarious to even say. I would probably assume no. I don't know, but I would probably assume no because I mean, no one's protected, but I think they are such a small minority that they just want to be under the radar. But again, Evelyn, I don't know.
Okay.
All communication has been cut off with
Yeah.
Iran, so
Yeah. So it's hard to know.
it's hard to know. We don't even know the numbers of people who have been massacred there.
Right. Let's switch topics to your work, your daily professional occupation, as the director of training and education at the American Jewish Committee, you're educating employees in companies about anti-Semitism.
Yes.
What is the anti-Semitism Jews mostly experience in companies in America?
That's a great question, Evelyn. And I'll tell you how all of this started. After the tragic death and murder of George Floyd, companies, as they should, were doing a lot of anti-racism trainings, et cetera, which is absolutely wonderful and okay. And of course, support that. But what was happening is we were getting emails from Jewish employees who were saying, I'm a huge ally. I absolutely believe in this. I am so happy they're doing this. Number one, they're doing this for most minorities, except for the Jewish community. Number two, when I sit down in these trainings, the trainers that they bring in, even when it has nothing to do with Jews, the Jewish community or Israel, somehow are blaming Jews for what the police are doing or, what's going on with minorities in America or claiming that Israel is training police to do this, to do
Mm.
that. Israel is responsible for this. Jews don't experience racism because we're white and wealthy. And so bringing up all these anti-Semitic tropes. And we knew we had to do something. While simultaneously, DEI folks, a lot of times now they don't really call themselves DEI because of what's going on, but people within DEI, they'll have a new name, but it's still the same thing, reached out to us and said, one, we recognize that we haven't done anything on anti-Semitism, but we've done it on, racism, LGBTQ, women, et cetera. Two, I brought someone in who's giving a talk on something completely that has nothing to do with Jews, Israel, anti-Semitism, but appropriated a lot of anti-Semitic tropes. We recognize this is a problem, and our Jewish employees, understandably, are really upset. We want to make this better. So we started doing these anti-Semitism trainings, and it has turned into my whole portfolio because luckily, a lot of companies are very interested, as they should be. If they're doing it for other groups, you should absolutely do it for the Jewish community. And on top of that, post October 7th, you have a 400% increase of anti-Semitism in America. So you need to cover that. Now, a lot of these companies are also global. So we are not only doing it for Americans,
Mm.
we're doing it for Canadians, Europeans. I mean, we had one music company that literally had people from India to their South Korea offices all over Europe, et cetera. And we gave presentations for them. All of our presentations are customized for the companies and the organizations that we work for. So it's never move out of the way. I'm coming in, I'm doing my thing. It is what is the culture like? What would you like for us to discuss? This is what we discuss. How can we collaborate with you? And what's also really important, Evelyn, is we work very closely with Jewish ERGs, Jewish employees at these companies.
What is ERGs? What is that?
ERGs are they are the different groups that they have, like the LGBTQ ERG, the African American. So the Jewish
Groups,
ERG,
okay,
almost like a
identity
club.
groups within
Yes, exactly.
companies. Yeah.
Yes. And so a lot of companies don't have them, but they should. But the ones that do, we connect with the Jewish employees. And one major aspect of my presentation that's very important, and I think the most compelling, is having Jewish employees share their stories. I
Yeah.
get pictures from them. I put that up. We work on, because depending on how many people we have, we can't have them talk for 20 minutes. So we really work on their narrative and what they want to discuss. But this is where my family's from. This is where we escaped from. This is what my family dealt with. And this is what it's been like post October 7th for me. And that's really important because employees may or may not remember what I talk about, but they're going to remember that their colleague jumps on the subway, and that person might not think twice about it, but their Jewish colleague has to remove their kippah, has to hide their Jewish star. They might go on college trips with their kids and not even think about colleges outside of, grades, et cetera. But for Jewish college age parents, um, they have to go on these trips and they have to think, okay, which university is actively fighting anti-Semitism? Which university is stopping the, protests calling for the genocide of Jews? Which university is dealing with professors who are specifically calling for the genocide of Jews or anti-Zionists, etc. Or which university is safe for my kid to just walk in because he's Jewish. And people don't think about that, but it's the personal narrative that we see makes the biggest difference. So
Yeah.
every time I do a presentation, I collaborate with the company that I'm working with. And then depending on where they are, if it's, if it's a presentation I'm doing, for example, Canadian managers for one of the biggest fast food companies in the world, and they're getting the red inverted triangle spray painted all over their store and from the river to the sea, et cetera, and their managers don't understand what this is, we will specifically do the presentation focusing on Canada because of where they're located, and then, do a bigger presentation. So we could always bring our content experts from all over the world because AJC is all over the world, from India to Poland to Berlin to, et cetera. And we have 25 regional offices to specifically cater to the companies we're working with.
Right. Oh, that's wonderful. So, is it very different in different countries? What kind of stories employees have about what they experience at work in terms of anti-Semitism?
Yes, I mean, some companies it just don't want to deal with it at all, and other companies are more, active in dealing with it. I wouldn't say it's based on region more than just based on the companies. And, I my heart goes out to DEI folks. They don't have a PhD in this. They didn't get into this to deal with, Israel, Gaza, because, and a lot of times they'll say to me, if we cover this, we also have to cover Azerbaijan and other communities and the Armenian community. And, there's so much Ukraine, Russia, etc. But I always say to them, this presentation and the presentation I give is not about Israel and Gaza. It's not about the war. It's about the rise of anti-Semitism because of the war. I could answer any questions you
Uh-huh.
want about the war, about what's going on. But this is not about the war. This is about the rise of anti-Semitism because of the war. And we know that there is a pattern in when there is a rise in anti-Semitism. Number one, when there's things going on politically, when there's an election, when you had, for example, the January 6th riots and, the Camp Auschwitz t-shirts, et cetera. We know that when people are unsure of what's going on politically in their world, there is a rise of anti-Semitism. There's also a rise of xenophobia, homophobia, racism, et cetera. Number two, we know that there's a pattern during Jewish holidays, etc. Most people have the luxury of walking into their house of worship. As you know, Evelyn, it's not like that for Jews
Hmm.
anywhere in the world. We have to go through metal detectors. We have
Hmm.
armed guards. My, children who grow up in Jewish day schools are used to police officers and guards on their campus with guns. We have to have our bags checked. We have to have our cars checked, etc. You can't just walk in. And it's like that for synagogues, Jewish schools, JCCs, etc. And then we also know that whenever Israel is at war with her neighbors, there's a rise of global anti-Semitism around the world. World Jewry has to, in the eyes of the anti-Semite, pay the price of what Israel is doing, whether Israel's actually doing it or not, but in their eyes, what Israel's doing.
Hmm. So, um, you have Jewish employees share their stories of anti-Semitic experiences they have outside of the company, and
Yes,
also
and it,
inside the company.
yes, and sometimes it's a little sensitive with the inside of the companies because the companies don't want it to be, verbalized. But definitely outside of the company and
Hmm.
just what they're experiencing and what post October 7th life has been like for them.
Hmm.
And I'm telling you, Evelyn, we will have men who, when I'm, going over this with them, are so stoic, and then they get in front of, a lot of times it's on Zoom because employees are from all over the world. And I will have older men hysterically crying about what is going on in their lives post October
Hmm.
7th, how they feel. I mean, the trauma the Jews are carrying the generational trauma we've carried for millennia, especially post-Holocaust, expulsions, et cetera, and then post-October 7th. It's really intense.
Yes, it
And
is.
you give someone the opportunity to speak and it comes out. And, and I've had non-Jewish employees say to me, I don't want to ask because I don't want to burden. I know, for example, I had, some African American employees say to me, post George Floyd, it felt overwhelming because so many people were emailing and asking. And you know what Jewish employees say? We are not overwhelmed at all because no one is asking, no one
Mhm.
is emailing, no one is checking in on us. We wish we were overwhelmed. It would be a blessing to be overwhelmed with emails and people asking how we're doing. So it's definitely a different thing. And the other thing I talk about in my trainings is what's referred to by psychologists as Jewish psychologists as traumatic invalidation, because that is what the Jewish community is dealing with.
What is
Our
that?
trauma is called traumatic invalidation,
Mhm.
because now my portfolio also covers anti-Semitism in the medical field, in psychology, psychiatry, social work, and as you know, Evelyn, it has blown up.
Mhm.
And so there's a term, it's called traumatic invalidation. And that's what Jews are dealing with, where our trauma is invalidated. And not only is it invalidated, but our trauma, we are being told we deserve it. We're being gaslit, saying it's not really happening. We are being told that we are the cause of it, and things that you're never supposed to say to people who are going through trauma. So it's invalidating our trauma. And that's exactly what I think the Jewish community is dealing with post October 7th.
Mhm. So you want to explain to employees in a company what's going on in the minds and in the hearts of Jewish people in general, um, during times like post October 7th. And you're explaining to them, and you have some employees of that company share their own experiences.
Yes, yes.
Okay.
So we always start our trainings, and again, they're all customized, but our trainings really focus on our traditional trainings are who are Jews and the diversity of the Jewish community. And that's why it's so powerful that I could lead a training like this, because people don't know that there are Mizrahi Iranian Jews, that there's Jews from the Middle East. They don't know
Hmm.
that over 60% of Israel's population are Jews from the Middle East who had to escape in 48, who had to escape in the 70s from the Arab world, from North Africa, and from Iran due to Islamic fundamentalism or Arab imperialism. They don't realize that. They don't know that 10 to 15% of the Jewish community in America is made up of Jews of color, African American Jews, et cetera. They don't know that there are Latino Jews, that there are South Asian Jews, Asian American Jews, et cetera. And so we really look at the diversity of the Jewish community. We look at a quick history of anti-Semitism. Then we look at statistics. For example, 2025, the FBI came out with a statistic that Jews are 2% of America's population, but we receive over 70% of religious-based hate crimes. 2% comparing to over 70%. And then, for example, if I'm doing a training just focusing on New York or something, I will then bring in the numbers coming out of New York or coming out of Canada or
Hmm.
Australia, et cetera. And then we look at anti-Semitic tropes and canards and how they're being recycled today. And then while we don't talk about Israel and Gaza, I have to talk about anti-Semitism related to Israel. And we discuss, and this is based on the International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance, the IRA definition of anti-Semitism. What is legitimate criticism of Israel? Because absolutely there is, like any other nation state. And when does that criticism cross the line into anti-Semitism, which is, the demonization, delegitimization, and the double standards? And we applied a fourth one, also disqualification, disqualifying Jews for their perceived or actual Zionism. So anti-Semitism based on perceived or actual Zionism. We end with how to be an ally to the Jewish community. This is when I bring back Jewish employees to discuss what allyship means for them and what they would like in regards to allyship. If they don't feel comfortable discussing this, then before the training, I have the DEI folks send a Google Doc so people could anonymously say what, allyship means for them. And then I'll go over that. And then we open it up for questions and answers.
Amazing. So, um, I heard from a friend of mine. She's a teacher in a. She's a college teacher in the Netherlands,
Hmm.
and she said that she has that there are colleagues who don't want to collaborate, who don't want to work with her anymore because she's Jewish and therefore probably pro-Israel.
Hmm.
Um, do you hear do you hear situations like that happening in
All
the
the
companies
time.
where you work that you work with?
Companies, yes, we hear it also because AJC has an amazing, it's called the Center for Education Advocacy. So we work very closely with everything from kindergarten up to university level, deans, professors, principals, university presidents, et cetera. But yes, we absolutely hear that with Jewish colleagues. And the other
And,
thing that we see, oh, sorry, go
yeah,
ahead.
and
Um,
what would you advise a Jewish employee who is in such a situation to do?
So we always say, and again, I'm not an employment lawyer, so I really try to stay away from advising because I we could always connect them to employment lawyers, but I always say, number one, document everything. And number two, this is where your HR staff really comes in. This is when you have to go to HR, and it is their job to protect you and to protect the company because overall, if you have unhappy employees, you're not going to have a successful company. And HR staff and the C-suite, if they are smart, they will recognize that. If employees feel like they cannot show up as their best self to work and people do not want to collaborate with them based on who they are and their identity, and let's make sure we understand Zionism is a major part of their identity, then that's basically an unsuccessful work environment. And I don't think anyone in the C-suite would want or should want someone who's not going to collaborate with their colleagues.
But isn't it too sensitive for the leadership of a school to address this with colleagues who with employees who don't want to work with Jewish employees because
It
of
is
Gaza?
sensitive, and a lot of times they will, brush it under the rug or kick the can down the
Yeah.
road. But if it's a company or a university, and of course universities function like companies, um, if they are smart, they will address it and nip it in the
Hmm.
bud because it will never go away.
Hmm.
And I will tell you, Evelyn, I've dealt with companies who have been amazing, and
Hmm.
I've also dealt with companies who don't get it at all,
Hmm.
at all.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah. Um, is it only in big companies that you deliver this training?
That's a great question. So I work on the national team. So yes, when I personally do it, it is for the bigger companies.
Hmm.
But because we have 25 regional offices in Los Angeles and 15 abroad, if it is for a smaller company, let's say in St. Louis, et cetera, our regional directors, who are all very capable, incredibly intelligent, know this stuff inside and out too, they will then lead the trainings with their team.
Hmm. Okay.
And I said
Um,
that I do it on Zoom, but I also need to mention that I do also fly all over the world and do these trainings.
oh, amazing. Um, do you run into any resistance from participants when you deliver your
Oh,
program?
yes, absolutely.
What for
Always.
instance? What kind of
DE,
resistance?
well, everything from, I mean, I have worked with amazing DEI folks who I love and I consider allies and dear friends who, again, they don't know anything and they'll say, I don't know, but we're here to learn from you. And they've just been amazing and supportive. And
So,
then there's DEI,
one second. The DEI.
diversity, equity, and inclusion.
Yes, those are that's the department in a company that takes care
Yes.
of diversity and e
Diversity,
equity
inclusion,
and
exactly.
inclusion. Yes,
Yes, and
of
they're the ones
different.
who are, they're the gatekeepers. They're the ones who bring me into the company to do these trainings.
Hmm.
It is always amazing when someone from the C-suite says, I want Saba and AJC to come in, because then they can't say anything. But if not, I'm dependent on the DEI folks and their team to give me the okay to do a training and to work with
Hmm.
them. Some are amazing and some are absolutely horrific. And you can imagine, because they are in line with the anti-Semitic, anti-Israel folks, or the people who, insidiously hide their anti-Semitism under the cloak and language of social justice. So
So
I
that,
deal with
yeah.
that.
So then it's
And
the DEI department that is resisting your training.
yes,
Yes.
yes.
How do they do that?
And
How do
then
they
other
resist?
times, They just say, we don't have time. We don't want to discuss this. I
Uh-huh.
was like, well, you did racism, LGBTQ. Yes, yes, but we don't have time for, I mean, they will find any excuse they can
Hmm.
to make
Okay.
it not happen.
Hmm. And the
Then
people, yeah,
yes, go ahead, please.
and the people who are in your Zoom sessions, for instance, the employees.
Oh, Evelyn, I can't even tell you the things I have seen and the
Mhm.
things people have said. And they have, I mean, this is post October 7th world. They have no embarrassment saying the things that they say. Then they also get applauded from their colleagues for it.
Wow.
I have had people say the most horrific things to my face in front of all their employees of October 7th didn't happen. Israeli women are lying. Israel doesn't have a right to, I mean, the gaslighting, et cetera. Or you're not a real Jew, I'm a real Jew, bringing in the Black Hebrew Israelite ideology, et cetera. It's horrific. So, what we do in order to prevent this, because it really throws people off and it's just so toxic,
Hmm.
is I always suggest when we do a Zoom that the questions are sent in
Hmm.
to the DI folks and to me, and then they're vetted, and then the person who's moderating then asks the question to me.
So you
And I
filter
will
out those
we
hateful
filter those
questions.
yes.
Yeah.
Now there's a part of me that likes to have those hateful questions there because I want employees to see like who they're working with and what is the culture. And
Hmm.
I want the DEI folks to see like you think you don't have an anti-Semitism problem, look at what's being said. That being said, it also derails the whole process. Um, I have had situations where even when people write in, they say the most horrific things and their name is there. Like they have no qualms knowing that HR and DEI and I are seeing this. Again, just, the chutzpah they have and just the confidence they have in their anti-Semitism and the lack of consequences they feel they will get because of their anti-Semitism.
Hmm. Yeah. Wow.
Oh, I've seen the worst, Evelyn, the worst of the worst.
Yes. So that's something you have to you have to prepare yourself for as well, I guess. How to deal
Yes,
with those
yeah,
situations.
yeah. How
How
to
did
deal,
you do that?
and well, Evelyn, the hard part is I come in and I come out. AJC, we will do one-offs. My desire is to build a relationship and a friendship with these companies. And we always say we're here for you so that when it's Jewish American Heritage Month in May, we always encourage them to celebrate it, to observe it, and we're here to help you plan with any speakers, any resources, ideas, etc. And I have really great relationship with companies, sports teams, et cetera, where they'll come to me and it's an ongoing relationship. And then we also sit and advise them on things. And for example, I worked with a global law firm and I've been working with them since October 7th training and then just, for Jewish American Heritage Month, et cetera. But they also came to me and said, because there's an online on social media, it's called Stop Anti-Semitism, where they basically name and shame anti-Semites. And one of their lawyers was one of the people that they named and shamed because their lawyer was saying really, really horrific anti-Semitic things. And so they came to me and they said, how do we deal with this? You have suggestions. And again, I'm not an employment lawyer, so I don't give it from a law perspective. I just give it more from, a Jewish human rights perspective.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, I don't work with I don't work for them. I work with them, but I don't work for them. The Jewish employees are there.
Yeah.
And so I have to take a lead from them and I have to listen to them because we have been in situations where the DEI person, the manager makes anti-Semitic comments, tries to shut me down. I want to push back and I get Jewish employees, and I form a relationship with them, a friendship. They have my cell, are texting me or DMing me or Zooming me privately and saying, please don't push back. We don't want to lose our jobs. Now, I could say to them, if you lose your job, we know lots of lawyers who could sue them. But at the end of the day, I can't do that because I'm not them. I don't, it's easy for me to wreak havoc and leave, and then Jewish employees are stuck dealing with it. So I have to be very, very sensitive to how they feel and how they want to approach things because they're the ones who are there and they
Yeah.
have to show up every day, and I don't.
And
And so
they're
that's why
vulnerable. Yeah.
yeah, they're the ones who are vulnerable. So I want to be very respectful of that. And so I always take my cue from them. And they're the ones who also tell me like the company culture because the DEI person could tell me, But if they're not Jewish, they don't know. It's the Jewish ERG folks who would tell me. And by the way, it's not as if everyone who is a part of the Jewish ERG agrees also, because a lot of times these Jewish ERGs could also be made up of anti-Zionists, people. So there's also lots of like dynamics that take place in these groups too.
Mhm. Um, so I think it's great that instead of being a Jewish employee who feels totally alone and isolated with all the feelings of um, um, anti-Semitism that is getting to them, to you as one individual, that you, the moment your company comes, the moment the American Jewish Committee comes in, at least they have the American Jewish Committee to turn to, right? And
Yes, they're not alone. They're
no,
not alone. Yes.
and the American Jewish Committee will help to build a Jewish identity group in the company, or may advise that individual. Is that also correct?
So we don't specifically, it's not in our place to advise on how to create an ERG. We
Mm,
actually work with some great Jewish organizations, nonprofits that do that.
mhm.
So but if someone wants to form a Jewish ERG, because a lot of times companies will say, well, we don't do religious ERGs, which
Mhm.
is ridiculous because we know that there are Jews who are practicing and there are Jews who are not practicing, and it's more
No.
cultural, it's more identity, it's an ethnicity. So if
Yes.
you're going to do LGBTQ again, LGBTQ, African American, like Latino, Latinx, etc., you should also be doing Jewish. By the way, you should also be doing Catholic and you should be doing Islam, Muslim too, and Hindu because you have people who practice and people who don't, but still identify culturally. So
Yeah.
it's really frustrating when companies say, well, we don't do religious ERGs
Mhm.
because anyone who's a part of a religious community is also part of a nationality. But so we don't advise on how to create one. Once it is created, we will then advise on, resources, programming, content, talks they could have, and then always encourage them to ask their DEI HR staff to do an anti-Semitism training.
Right. Okay. Do you have any information about the improvements Jewish employees experience after their colleagues receive this education?
Yes, I mean, we always have a little survey before and a survey after.
Hmm.
So we get a lot of times, we learned so much. This is so wonderful. I didn't realize. And, that's really important. And then because I do have an ongoing relationship with a lot of the Jewish employees, and they're so lovely. And sometimes I kind of turn into a therapist, a de facto therapist, just because I listen to them and I let them, vent and share. I get a lot of, I get a lot of heads up on like what has happened post and what's going on and things like that. So they've always been really successful. Again, we are very sensitive to how we approach this. We are very sensitive to collaborate with the companies, the DEI folks, to make sure that we do something that doesn't put that, we want people, if it's on Zoom, to want to listen. I don't turn people away. And this is why we're non-part. I mean, but AJC is nonpartisan, so no matter what, but you're never going to hear me say, Trump said that, Biden said that, Kamala said this, we don't do that because what I want is to make sure that people listen and they're not going to just close their computer and churn away.
Yeah.
So we do it in a way that we feel like is inviting. And I always say this, we at AJC believe in counseling and not canceling. We recognize that Jews are only 2% of America's population. We recognize that Jews are only 0.02% of the world's population. A lot of times people have never met a Jew. They've never taken a Jewish history class. They don't know. So we would like to believe that a lot of times when people are saying something that is anti-Semitic, it's just because they don't know. And this is why we're here, is to teach them. This is why we always like to, all of our trainings are off the record. The companies have the videos, it belongs to them. As you see, Evelyn, I have not mentioned a single name of a company. We keep
Hmm.
it all off record. We
Hmm.
want to make sure we protect them. And we always say, ask us any question you want. No questions off limits. And that's the beauty of also typing it in or writing on note cards when we're in person. So people feel like, look, if this is your only 1 hour you're going to have with a Jew, ask me questions that you feel that this is a safe space and I'm not going to mock you. I'm not going to say you're anti-Semitic, except when people say straight up anti-Semitic things. But it's an explanation of, let me explain to you why Jews find this offensive.
Right. So, what steps can our listeners take if they want a company to get education about anti Semitism?
We would love to work with you. Please just go to AJC Anti-Semitism Training. It will pop up for you. You could send an email. It comes directly to us, and we will take the steps to meet with you, discuss, collaborate, etc. So we would absolutely love it. And again, if it's not a big national training, then we have offices all over the world, all over America, and we could always do smaller regional trainings.
Great.
Also, we also have
Yes.
some great resources online, Evelyn, if that's
Mm.
okay. We
Yes.
have a resource called Translate Hate. Again, it's we know that a lot of people just don't know what anti-Semitism is. So you could just go online, AJC Translate Hate, and it talks about anti-Semitic tropes and canards, very easily understood, non-academic language with lots of pictures, etc., explaining why this is anti-Semitic, the history of it, how these tropes are being recycled today. It's in English, it's in Spanish. We even worked with the Catholic Church, with the Vatican on one, specifically focusing on, the Vatican and Catholic anti-Semitism, et cetera. So we worked and collaborated closely with the Vatican and the Catholic Church with that. We also have, it's called Call to Action. So and it's based on different organizations. So how you could combat anti-Semitism in schools, combat anti-Semitism in the media, combat anti-Semitism in your corporate space, et cetera. So you could do AJC Call to Action and you could find all of that. We also have
Great.
our survey. Every year we do a survey looking at how Jews are feeling comparing to the rest of Americans. And in that way, you could see the statistics. And especially we have, questions asked about Jewish employees showing up at work, how they're feeling post October 7th, et cetera. And we've been doing this for years. So you see a comparison from like 2025 and 2022, et cetera. And then anything you need to know on anti-Semitism, what's going on in the global Jewish community, in Israel, in America, we have all of that online. We have so many resources.
So, that is something an individual can look at, but also maybe a small company can use and
Absolutely.
share with with its team
Absolutely.
and
And
increase
again,
the
Evelyn,
knowledge. Yeah.
I represent, corporations, et cetera. But we also, as I mentioned, have Center for Education Advocacy, and we literally take care of you from kindergarten to university level for parents, for students, for administrators, for deans, for teachers, et cetera. So we have a whole group of basically PhDs, professors like me who are now at AJC working on this, and they're fabulous and amazing.
Wonderful. Saba, we come to the end of our conversation. Thank you so very much for talking so passionately about the work you are doing, the important work you're doing in educating people in companies about anti-Semitism. I want to thank our listeners as well. And for those who want to know more about Never Again Is Now podcast, you can go to our um, podcast channels, Never Again Is Now podcast channels on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcast, and iHeart. And you'll find other older episodes and also more of the background of my co-host Phyllis Zimler Miller and me. Thank you very much, and I hope to I wish you all lots of good luck with your work in the future. And I want to say to our listeners, like we say after every episode, please speak up to anti-Semitism whenever you can. Thank you.
Thank you, Evelyn. Thank you, everyone.